Thanks, Josh.
Michael,
It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for
Michael.
another...
We're not ready for that yet. We are going to look at the NBA. He's excited. The NBA season is off. We are ready to go. We're 2 days away from the beginning. So I'm going to take you through the NBA preseason, what we've learnt, one takeaway, all 30 teams. Michael, now.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and for that transgression, Michael, that's going to cost you 300 Imperial credits. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at LockedOnFantasyBasketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get a big return this season. To start it off with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers place a $5 bet and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. I'd like for you to double bang it. Listen on the audio, watch the video, download the audio, thumbs up, subscribe. By the way, new thing, hasn't officially launched yet, but it's coming. Locked On newsletters for your team every day. And there'll be a national newsletter. You'll see a little fantasy takeaway from me in each of those newsletters. But whatever your favorite team is, there's going to be a Locked On newsletter. Head to lockedondaily.com and sign up for our Locked On newsletters for your team, where it's got all the information for your team, what's happening recently from our people and sources all around the world, plus me. Locked On Daily, go and subscribe. All right, preseason in the books. I could give you 10 takeaways from every team, and I think I probably have over the course of the last 2 weeks or so as we're doing mock drafts and busts and sleepers and all that sort of stuff, but I just wanted to dilute it down. Dilute it? No, concentrate it. Bring it in. Make it tighter, so that we can just talk about one main takeaway, which I'm sure I will divert away to talking about more from each team across the NBA preseason as we get ready for the regular season to begin. We're going to take this big fella off in alphabetical order, and we will start with Atlanta. I do think that Onyeka Okongwu is going to start. It was shaky. Okongwu was out with a toe injury, and then Clint Capella sprained his ankle. Okongwu started the last preseason game. I don't know. I think we might be there. I think we might have done it. I don't know. It could end up being like a 24 minute split. Capella might start. I honestly not really sure. But the fact that Capella hurt his ankle, the fact that Okongwu is back and playing, makes me think that we are going to get Onyeka Okongwu starting. He's a good percentage field goal, free throw, shot blocking, steals, sort of passing, who has worked on his three-point shot. Could easily be top 70, probably won't, but could easily do it. And that obviously is an interesting player when we're making selections towards the end of a fantasy draft. I wanted to take the Flyers, and there's always different parts of fantasy off seasons. There's the start of things. After Summer League, we get into middle of August, free agency's done. And we start to have a look. Ooh, we take a flyer. Will the Pelicans start Carlo Makovic? No, they won't start Carlo Makovic. Noah Clowney seems like a really good upside play. Will they give him a crack? Well, yeah, but no. It doesn't look like they will start Clowney. It looks like he'll come off the bench, which is fine. He's a young player, and he will start later on. I have got absolutely zero doubt about that. Noah Clowney is going to play a role, and he is going to be a really, really strong contributor for this Nets team. He is going to be important. He blocks shots. I think he's going to be able to shoot threes, pretty comfortably. And it's just a little frustrating, I think, at this point that he's not starting. But we have to bear that in mind. We have to take note of that when we're doing all our stuff. When we're talking about the way that we need to process and look at our fantasy drafts, all of that thing. We need to be aware of where teams are at. At the moment, this team is not starting him. And that's okay. That's okay that they're not starting Clowney. But your ability to draft him and stash him, it's going to really depend on what happens in these first two games. He's not like, well, you got to hold because it's going to happen eventually. Like if he's playing 22 minutes off the bench, that becomes almost impossible to hold in a standard daily changes format. Weekly leagues, deep bench leagues, roto leagues, sure, there is clear stashability. But I don't think he's playing this 30-minute a night role off rip. In Boston, this becomes important because when they have a back-to-back, Kristaps Porzingis is out and Al Horford will not play. And in the preseason, every game that Al Horford did not play, Luke Kornet started. There is still Nemesh Keita. There is still Xavier Tillman, the cashier. Xavier T. Illman. He's still there. But Kornet is the starter. And when you're looking to stream in a center, old Lucas becomes that guy. In Charlotte, Trey Mann started when he came across last season. That was when LaMelo Ball was out. And look, I thought there was a real chance he was going to be able to do a lot. He didn't. Like, he was fine. He got a lot of steals. But he didn't, do the usage stuff that I thought he would. He has this preseason. He looks really good. Now, there's a lot of shooting stuff that's probably going to regress from Mann. But at the moment, he looks to be their sixth man. Pun unintended. He looks to be someone that if you're looking for a Jordan Clarkson-ish type player that isn't the Filipino legend himself, Mann could be it. I think he's going to flirt with 12-team league value. He's going to have a chance to be a 30-minute-a-night guy, maybe, if they make Josh Green a starter in name only, which is also possible. So the development of Mann filling that role is something that I didn't 100% see happening at the beginning of all of this preseason stuff. The other one we talk about is in Chicago, because I say that there is a big guard squeeze, and that doesn't mean they're squeezing the big guards. It means there's just a lot of guards. There's Kobe White, there's Zach LaVine, there's Josh Giddey, there's Ayo Dosunmu, and now Lonzo Ball is back, and he is playing, and he is going to have a lot of games off. Now, a lot of people will want to grab Lonzo Ball. I understand that. There's a lot of emotional connections with what Lonzo does. I understand that. But he is going to be limited. He's going to play 16 minutes a night. He's going to sit back-to-backs. He's going to sit other games as well. And there's just too many players around. So, while it's great that Lonzo's back, that value of him, of White, of Giddey, maybe less so LaVine, he's playing a little bit at the 3. I feel like they're all just going to cut into each other's production. While the lack of forwards is glaring. There's Patrick Williams who's injured, and there's Matas Buzelis. Also, for some God knows reason, they kept Talen Horton-Tucker on the roster, one of the NBA's worst players. They also kept EJ Liddell as a two-way guy. He's a forward, so that's something. Horton-Tucker hasn't really played any forward at all the last couple of years. He's basically played as a 1 or a 2. And him without the ball in his hands is the best recipe for losing I have ever seen. But why would you want the ball in Talen Horton-Tucker's hands when White, Ball, LaVine, Giddey, Dosunmu all exist? So there's just too many guards, I think, around there in Chicago to have any level of faith in any number of them. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. We are here in October, and that means that Halloween is here. And that means we're going to have scary stuff. But you might have things in your life that scare you that aren't a joke. They're not cartoonishly weird skeletons. It's something that's bothering you. And facing your fears is a great way to be able to get past that stuff, process it, deal with it, and start to live your life to its full. The other thing that can be scary is just not facing your fears at all, which can hold yourself back from so many different opportunities. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's easy, it's online, it's suited to your schedule. You go in there, you fill out a questionnaire, they match you up with someone, bang, done. You match with that therapist, you have a session, you talk to them. At the end, you give it a bit of thinking. You go, is that good? Was it bad? Do I like this person? Do we mesh? It's cool if you don't. Not everyone likes you. Not everyone you have to like. That's how the world works. But you tell BetterHelp, they switch you to a new therapist free of charge. Easy does it. So overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. Okay. Let's look at some more preseason things here. Max Strus is out for like 6 weeks with an ankle sprain. What that means is that they, obviously, that he was going to start for them. And what it means to me is that Karis LeVert is going to get a sizable bump. Now, I don't believe that Karis LeVert will start. I think that Dean Wade will start. But this means that LeVert needs to do more Instead of being maybe a 26-minute-a-night player, he might play 29. Those shots that Strus would get, not saying that Dean Wade's going to get them all, Levert is going to do more. And that makes Levert, who was already getting underdrafted and had a lot of value in a points league anyway, it means he has to be grabbed. So if Karis Levert is sitting anywhere on your waiver wire, you got to grab him at this point, even though I don't think he will start. Speaking of starters, I think we are fairly confident that it's going to be Derek Lively starting at center for the Mavs. Wasn't sure about how it would go. Lively was clearly better than Daniel Gafford in the playoffs. We don't know if it's 28 minutes Lively, 20 Gafford. We don't know if it's 26, 22. We don't know if it's 30 and 18. I think it's probably more 25, 23, 26, 22. But Lively is going to get first crack at that. Now, on a per-minute fantasy basis, Gafford is clearly the better option. And they both remain draftable. The other thing you can do, you could pick both of them theoretically at the end of a draft, see what happens. You don't worry too much about the fact that they've got 2-game playoff weeks because A, they're the back end of your roster. B, maybe one of them separates by then anyway and you grab something different. But Lively's going to get first crack at this. He has some bad free throws, but second year, I'm expecting a step forward from Big Derek, and we'll see. Julian Strouder cooked in the preseason. Absolutely unbelievable from him. A lot of it was hitting 1,000,000% from 3. All right, but he did it continually. And he was much better than Christian Brown. And it's one of those ones where we can look at preseason, and I'm very much quick to do this, is we look at preseason and you can see a guy going off and you go, well, that's all just hot shooting. That doesn't mean that he's carving out 30 minutes. There's just no way. Shout out Dalton Connect, right? That's just not going to happen. But with Strouder, you look at that and go, well, he shot really well. That's great. But there isn't a massive wide open pathway for him to play big minutes. So he's probably Strouder more of a watch list player, but he played himself into the full discussion of being a starter. Very, very clearly. It is clear, with 2 days to go before the start of the NBA season, that Amen Thompson is not ready. I don't know if he will be ready at opening night, but he did not play in the preseason. There was never a chat from this team to say that he has passed the clearance for contact. So he's, at our assumption, out. And I would say, I know you don't want to hear it, out indefinitely. In the true meaning of the word. Because we just don't know when he is coming back. So a lot of people were drafting him round 11, round 10 in some spots. I don't know if he is going to play. And I know that sounds harsh, but I just don't know when he is going to play. And then when he comes back, Fontecchio, Hardaway, Beasley, they're all going to get minutes. Holland, Alavasar, is he going to get 29? Is he going to play in October or November? It's been since March. That is bad. I am worried, very worried. Now, if you've got him, you put him in your IL and you see what happens. But he is not ready at this point. We had this thought in the preseason that there were too many Warriors, that this was a team that wasn't very good, but had too many good players. And then, the guy that you could easily make the argument is their 11th guy signed a 3-year, $30 million extension in Moses Moody. Why, I don't know. Is this the Zeke Naji special? When is he going to play? And I did my 10-man rotation for the Warriors. I couldn't do it. Curry. Cool. He's a player, and he will get a lot of minutes because he's Steph Curry. Pajemski. Yep. They seem to anoint him as this great option who's going to take 1,000,000 threes, and you can't be traded for Lowry Markin. They brought in Buddy Hield. They brought in D'Anthony Melton. They have the mitten Gary Payton. They have Andrew Wiggins, who can sort of play the two a little bit. Where does Moody play? But they've just signed him, so I think he's really good. But who doesn't play? Meaning, I don't know how we trust Pajemski, Melton, Hield, Moody, Wiggins, Kuminga, or Jackson Davis. I don't know how you can trust any of them. Because there's just too many bodies to go into it. What are the odds? What for? That there is one Warriors player for the second consecutive year that plays over 30 minutes, and that's Steph. I think everyone else played under 30 last season, Clay at 29. The only one who might challenge it is maybe Wiggins, maybe Kuminga. But how many Warriors play over 25 minutes a game? That might be the interesting thing. Too many good players. And that is a problem when we're trying to predict fantasy value and breakout type stuff. I think it's fairly clear that Amen Thompson, we talked about Asar before, I think Amen Thompson is very clearly the sixth man in Houston. I love Amen. He goes very high in some drafts. 7th, 8th, 9th round. He shot horribly from the free throw line. He's a great rebounder, good steals, good blocks, good passer. He can fill in at the 1, 2, 3, and 4. But, is he playing 28? Probably not. There's just too many guys. 23, 24, maybe. So he's the sixth man. He won't start. He's coming off the bench. Yeah, people were reaching pretty high for him in a lot of drafts, and it's something to be cautious of. Andy Nembhard isn't doing enough. We had this worry. We saw Nembhard with Halliburton out in the playoffs put together some good games. We also saw him in the regular season do nothing. And I would say so far through the preseason, it's been a lot of nothing for Nembhard, who can score okay, but he's low usage, can get some assists, but he's not going to do it much when Siakam and Halliburton are there. I didn't mind grabbing him with a last pick after they gave him that extension, but I don't know if he can do enough. I don't know if there's enough there. I don't know how that even comes to fruition. How does he do it? I don't think he does, actually. So my takeaway from this team is, with Ben Mathurin back as well, who I don't think is that good, but he's going to play, I don't really think there's enough for Nembhard to do. There should be something for Kevin Porter to do for the Clippers. Kawhi is out indefinitely. I'm not sure when he's coming back. I believe they will start, Norman Powell will start. And I think the other two spots will be Mann and Jones. But it could very easily be Porter in place of Mann. The reason I think Porter will probably come off the bench is just because who creates any shots as part of that bench group, and he might be part of the closing lineup. Porter, in the past, has had issues in fantasy with bad turnovers, bad field goals, bad free throws. But he got assists, he scored. He actually got steals the last time out in Houston, and they have no one else to handle the ball, really, apart from Chris Dunn. Look, Bones Highland, I don't think is in the rotation. They have no one else who really creates their own shot apart from Porter. I don't mind him as a pickup. I worry, is he 24 minutes or 32? And does he need 27 usage to actually overcome some of the efficiency problems? The other LA team is Dalton Connect. And while I can make jokes about Dalton Connect and how I still don't love him as a prospect, and I still think that he went in the right position in the draft, he did have an unbelievable game. His other games were fine. But he's in the rotation. And we know that. There were some that might have doubted it. In the rotation doesn't mean 30 minutes. It might mean 17. It might mean 19. And with 4 teams, 2 games on opening night, someone who's going to play 20 minutes, who could have 12 points and 3 threes with 3 rebounds, that's useful enough. And Dalton Connect could be that player. Zach Edey, another rookie, is going to start. We know that Edey is going to start. Actually, we don't know 100%. Jaren Jackson didn't really play in the preseason. Well, I don't think he played at all with a hamstring injury. Edey, though, the question's going to be, A, does Edey start and play 20 minutes? Or does he start and play 30 minutes? Almost definitely not. And then the next question is, if he starts and plays 21, 22 minutes, is he having 17 usage or 28 usage? Because he had 33 usage in college. His one big game off the bench in the NBA preseason was 38 usage. So he is a guy that I love pushing out into an auction. I love seeing where he goes because he goes very early. But he could easily be 10-7 with 1.1 blocks in 21 minutes, and people have tripped all over their dicks to get him, and I don't know about that. He is going to start, though. He's done some of the things that we saw him do in college and have great success with. But look at the way those rotations looked in the preseason. Have a look at how that Memphis team was structured and whether we feel super confident in it. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You can get the season started with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can go over there, check out all of the latest stats. You can view the live play-by-plays. You can check out all of that on the exact same page on FanDuel where you would place your bets. And if you're a first-time customer coming to FanDuel, when you place your first $5 bet, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So if you want to have a look at the season win total show I did earlier today, You can go and check that out. You can check all the season win totals, the LeBron specials, the Bronny specials, the Wemby specials, the season awards, the season averages, the season totals, the NBA Cup, the NBA Finals. All of that is over there at FanDuel. So check that all out. Place your $5 bet. Get your $200 in bonus bets. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay. Let's now take a look at the next bunch of interesting things that developed across the preseason. At the end of last season, Bam Adebayo went from taking about 3% of his shots from three to about 14% over the final, 10 games or so of last season, around that mark. Now, that's an interesting development. In the preseason, he's bombing away. He's taking 3 to 4 per game. He is hitting them at a pretty good clip. And I have to think that they're trying to see whether they can move away eventually from him being a full-time center and moving someone like Superman Khalil Ware into the starting lineup. But don't get me twisted. Khalil Ware will not start opening night, almost certainly. And he might be behind Thomas Bryant and Kevin Love. I don't think he will, but it's very possible he will be, at least early on. And I don't think that he is a 12-team league guy at this point where. But Bam, the three-pointers, we think that is all a positive because three-pointers are a category in fantasy. But if you take them, and one of your strengths in the past has been field goals, he was at 52% last season, Bam, and you start taking more threes, does that become 49? And you lose that strength, and maybe you don't gain enough in three-pointers made to make up for it. So be very cautious about that change in game for Bam Adebayo. I don't really know what to make of the Bucks. Their rotation from Glenn Rivers looks basically the same. They won't have Chris Middleton, I'm guessing, opening night, so Taurean Prince will just play there. And honestly, everything else just looks the same. In Minnesota, with the trade of getting Dante DiVincenzo, sending out Karl Anthony Towns, and DiVincenzo doing ball handling, I don't know that we see Rob Dillingham. He's a rookie point guard. He's going to be bad. He's very skinny and a poor defender. He can get hot and shoot, absolutely. But we saw the last couple of games, which they started to treat more like a dress rehearsal. He wasn't in the rotation, Rob. So if you've got a Rob Dillingham, you can wait and see what happens on opening night. Don't be shocked if he's a garbage time legend. You might be upset at it. You might hate the way they do it. But don't be surprised. We go to New Orleans. They are not starting a center. Unless they lied to us and their preseason lineups were false, they are not starting a center. They are starting Herb Jones at center. Now, which, of course, speaking of lying, is another lie. Zion is the center. Let's get this very straight. Zion Williamson is the center. But he doesn't want to be called the center. So Herb Jones is the center. Now, there was some people who tried to use logic, which is great. I love it. Love logic. I use it all the time. But try to use my own logic maybe against me or maybe for me to try and push something. That all sounds nefarious, but it's not. They were more like, hey, Josh, Karl Anthony Towns got a big boost going to center. Shouldn't Herb Jones get the same? And my response to that is no, because I don't think he's really going to play any different. I don't think that this means that Herb Jones starts getting double-digit rebounds and standing as a drop big protecting the paint. Doesn't mean that happens. He still does his thing. He guards in the perimeter. He's a help defender. He can block shots. He will not all of a sudden become Brook Lopez. So that is why that doesn't change for me. But Herb, we know that he's going to start. There's no Trey Murphy. And CJ McCollum is going to start. Now, that is an annoying lineup because why do you need CJ when Ingram, Zion, and Murray are all handling the ball? What is he doing? Or more to the point, what's Ingram doing? Someone's going to be doing nothing. And Herb's going to have to do everything defensively. And I just wish they wouldn't do it. But it is what they're doing. I don't know that it sticks, but it's here for now. The New York Knicks are incredibly shallow. They don't have Mitchell Robinson, and now they don't have Precious Achiuwa. So when we get to the Knicks, and you're looking at their team, they're going to play a lot of minutes. They have to, because there isn't anybody else. Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, Hart, Towns is going to be the starting group, without question. And then it's Juice McBride, Cameron Payne, Jericho Sims. That's it. It could be Tyler Kolek. And then their other options are Pacome Dadier, Ariel Huckporty, Kevin McCullough, and Jacob Toppin. That's all garbage. No offense to those guys. I actually think Dadier might be an okay reserve wing in a few years, and Huck Porty can be a very good backup center, better than Jericho Sims very quickly, but it's not much. So the starters are going to have to play 1 million minutes. And then you run the risk of that leading to injuries for Brunson, for OG, for Hart, for Bridges, for Towns. Because your backups are guards plus Sims. Who are the forwards? There's nobody, man. For the Thunder, one of the reasons I was down relatively on Chet Holmgren is I think there's an overrating of blocks, as we've seen for years and years and years. Shout out to Miles Turner. Shout out to Jaren Jackson. Shout out to Walker Kessler. There's an overvaluation of blocks in category leagues. But Chet was moving to power forward for periods of time. Didn't know whether he was going to start or not. Well, now that's not going to happen because Isaiah Hartenstein's out. So some of that discount that I put onto Chet's numbers and pushed him down, he, at least for the short term, bumps back up. More minutes, more blocks, more rebounds. They have no backup. It's Pig Williams, who's injured. It's Kenrich Williams, who's injured. It's Isaiah Hartenstein, who's injured. So they had to sign bartending legend Alex Reese to be the backup center. And he played like 2 minutes a game in the preseason. So, yeah. Not good. Expect like more Aaron Wiggins. They might have to play Dylan Jones or Usman Jeng at center. So watch for those guys in deeper formats too. In Orlando, Jet Howard was the 11th overall pick last season. And I'll be honest with you, he sucked. He had injuries and he did absolutely nothing. But he's been very good in the preseason. He's been better than Tristan da Silva. He's been better than Gary Harris. He's been better than Mr. Black. I don't know that there's no starting role obviously for Jet with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope ahead of him. But he played 4 minutes a game last year. These little things, you always sort of got to know, like, and we watch it the first game, does he play as the 10th man? Does he play ahead of Gary Harris and Caleb Houston? Is he first in line if Franz gets hurt or if KCP gets hurt? We have to know these things. And that is improved Jet Howard. In Philadelphia, I don't know whether Paul George is going to be available. I don't know if Joel Embiid's going to be available. No idea. But what I do know is they don't seem set on their power forward. I think it's going to be a Martin. Could it be my favorite Martin? Shout out to Chris Berman. Could it be KJ Martin? Could it be Caleb Martin? It was Caleb, and the last 2 games have been KJ. Regardless of who it is, I don't want either of them in a 12-team league or probably in a 14-team league. But I would say that one of them starts, and then Gershon Yabusele is probably the backup center to Drummond with some minutes at the 4. He can play the 4, but he plays a fair bit of center. In Phoenix, Budenholzer has these guys taking threes. They were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in terms of the volume they took, even though there's a million good shooters, and now everyone's taking them. That is what Budenholzer does. So, adjust your expectations for Beal, Booker, Durant, Nurkic, Ryan Dunn, Tyus Jones, Royce O'Neal. Everyone's taking a million threes. Scoot Henderson, I thought that the injury to Shaedon Sharpe would mean that we are going to lock in at Scoot as the starter. Everything that I can see at the moment suggests that we won't, which is it's unbelievably infuriating. Yes, Tumani Kamara has been really good. Tumani Kamara has been solid. We don't need to add Tumani Kamara in any fantasy league or anything like that. Scoot was dropping 30-point double-doubles at the end of last season. Yes, a lot of people were out and it didn't really mean much, but he's your number 3 overall pick. You traded Damian Lillard because you got him. And we're going to start Tumani Kamara. Still don't mind grabbing Scoot towards the end of the draft, but this is again more of a warning. When you see Scoot Henderson not starting on opening night for the Blazers, be ready for it. He might still. Maybe they start him. But at this point, I don't think he will. The last thing we want to look at, the last 5 teams. I don't think we've got any clarity on how the ball is going to be handled in Sacramento. Between DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, and De'Aaron Fox. In Phoenix, when Beal joined them last season, he's the one that took the big usage hit. Sabonis already wasn't a super big usage player. DeRozan's a middle-of-the-pack guy and Fox is higher. But who gets more of the ball? Who gets the assists? Fox's assists have been way down. He was already low. he could average maybe honestly 4 assists if Sabonis and DeRozan are doing it all. And as a point guard, that's really bad, very clearly very bad. It's Jalen Suggs level. And then we'll see how it impacts things like usage. We don't know, though. I still don't really have a clear picture of how that's all going to go down. When Devin Vassell went down for San Antonio, I thought there was a real chance that they might put Steph Castle into the starting lineup. But Popovich, outside of having Victor Wembanyama, generally just doesn't really play rookies very much at all. And while Steph Castle's had a sizable enough role in preseason, he's not going to start, I don't think. I think it's going to be Julian Champagny. And then the number 1 usage player off the bench will be Keldon Johnson. And also coming off the bench will probably be Trey Jones. Meaning Castle's sort of not a point guard, not the most usage-heavy player, still as a backup. Is that enough to matter? I think probably not. I also, again, am not as high on Castle as others are. I would not have picked him at 4. I don't think he's got high defensive stat upside. I don't think he's going to turn into any sort of close to an average shooter, nor do I think he's a very good passer. But I'm also just very aware that, yes, it wasn't a good draft class. It's fine to take him there if you wanted to. But also, he's not going to work as a full-time point guard. He's not going to work as a number 1 usage player coming off the bench. And I think all that, he's had a pretty good preseason. I won't say it's knocked our socks off or anything. I'd say it's been pretty good. And that's not enough for me to feel super good about drafting him. From a current Spur in Steph Castle to a former Spur in Jakob Poeltl, Poeltl is very, very important for Toronto. Their backup center situation is dire. For fantasy, we know that if Kelly Olynyk gets that role, then he would be a must-roster player under all circumstances. But if they don't have Poeltl, they will lose almost every game. And then you run into a lot of the shutdown issues with a lot of their other good players. Poeltl is going to be bad at free throws. He only played 26 minutes a night last season. I'd be very surprised if it stays the same this year. The other options are guys like, they had Brandon Carlson on a 2-way. They waived him. Like Bruno Fernando, Jonathan Mobo, who's 6'7". He's going to be the backup 4. He's so important. In Utah, unless there's a last-minute switcheroo, Taylor Hendricks and Walker Kessler are going to start. Hendricks is Mitchell Robinsoning his usage. He's just not touching it, ever. I like his shot blocking ability. I like his 3-point shooting ability. But he's never touching the ball. Fine, take a flyer on him, but also be very, 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 very ready to move off. Kessler, on the other hand, I think we might get a top 50 year. Maybe not, but we might. He's going to start over John Collins, and this obviously kills any real value that Johnny Collins had. The last thing, for the Washington Wizards, assuming that he is healthy, but Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly, they're 2 French guys, I believe will start opening night. We also saw Keyshawn Johnson start some games with Sarr out, and if Sarr doesn't play, Keyshawn will be a stream option. He looked really good and added assists to his profile. But Bilal's a good steals and blocks guy. Sarr's going to be a blocks and rebounds and some threes player. And they're going to get opportunities on a terrible team to see where they are. And I think we should be looking at them a little bit closer than what we are in a lot of different drafts. That's 34 minutes for 30 NBA teams. Takeaways across the preseason. I hope you got something out of that. Again, I could talk for 5 hours on all this stuff, and I will all through the course of the season. So if you don't want to miss an episode as they start to come thick and fast, that's what she said, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.